Hello and welcome to a long overdue edition of Rory on Air. Lots of you have been in touch to ask what I'm up to and why I haven't posted a new video for ages. The answer is I've landed my first commercial helicopter job as a co-pilot for Bristow. I'm based in Aberdeen in the northeast of Scotland, flying the S92. The job is transporting offshore oil and gas workers to and from platforms, boats and semi-submersibles in the North Sea to the east of Aberdeen and both on the east and west side of the Shetland Islands. I actually joined Bristow back in May 2022, but largely due to an intense programme of training, buying a house and having a family, I haven't had time to update you until now. In this video you'll get to see some of the action on the Bristow ramp as aircraft start up, load passengers and depart for their flights offshore. I'll also talk through how I got here, what the training has been like and explain a bit more about the job itself. First of all, let me tell you about the aircraft. The S92 helicopter is built in the USA by Sikorsky and came into service in the mid-1990s. She has room for 19 passengers and 2 pilots. The aircraft is powered by 2 General Electric turboshaft engines, each capable of producing around 2,500 shaft horsepower. The aircraft is fitted with a rotor ice protection system, allowing us to fly in most icing conditions, particularly useful during the Scottish winter. She cruises at around 135 knots, has a full 4-axis autopilot system, air conditioning and cup holders for both pilots. Aberdeen is still one of the busiest heliports in the world, with 4 commercial helicopter operators flying several hundred passengers on and offshore. A typical day sees crews arrive at 6 AM to plan their flights, checking weather information, NOTAMs, load restrictions and many other parameters. After donning immersion suits and life jackets, at the aircraft, checklists are followed as systems are tested and ground crews monitor the start sequence. Once the aircraft is up and running, baggage, freight and passengers are boarded, while the pilots complete more pre-flight checks. These include programming the route into the flight management system, testing the navigation radios and adjusting bug settings on the primary flight display. Once the door has been secured and the chocks removed, the aircraft then taxi off the ramp and out to the runway, ready for departure. Welcome to the cockpit of the S92 helicopter here in the sunshine on the ramp at Aberdeen. I wanted to talk you through a little bit about the process that got me to this job and also a little bit about what the actual job itself is like. So last April I completed the multi-engine instrument rating on the Augusta 109 helicopter. I think it was less than a couple of weeks later I was offered an interview with Bristow here in Aberdeen. So I came up, I did an interview, I did an assessment in their simulator, did an ILS and a couple of circuits and a few other bits and pieces, and then I did a maths assessment as well. And at the end of the day, I disappeared off and I got a phone call a few hours later offering me a job as a co-pilot here on the 92. I was absolutely thrilled to accept. I'd long wanted to work for Bristow and follow some of my friends and colleagues who were on the same training course as me back in Leicester and to get myself up here as well. So I was absolutely chuffed to bits to be offered that opportunity. And within a few weeks I was here, having moved my family up from Leicester up to Aberdeen and started off the training process, which kicked off with a couple of weeks in the classroom, learning the ins and outs of this S92 helicopter, the various different electrical systems, the hydraulic systems, engine, performance, all kinds of things. We went through all the manuals and everything. So that was quite intense for a couple of weeks. Then we moved into the simulator phase. So there's a simulator in the Bristow Training Centre just a few hundred yards up the road here at the airport. And we spent about 5 or 6 weeks, my stick buddy and I, in the sim, learning the kind of procedures for the aircraft, you know, everything from taxiing on the ground right the way through to the sort of handling complexities of landing and taking off from rigs offshore, doing different types of instrument approach back into places like Aberdeen and up in Sunborough. And then once we completed that, we then did the type rating test, also in the simulator here, We passed that after a couple of days. It's 1 day of sort of VFR stuff, the general handling of the aircraft, and then 1 day of IFR stuff. And then we're signed off on the 92. That gets added to our licenses. We then came down to the Forties Road part of the operation, which is here where I'm sitting on the ramp here, and began what's called line training. So first of all, you do a kind of sim to aircraft conversion. So you go and fly the real thing for the first time for a couple of hours with an instructor, and get a feel for the slight differences in handling characteristics between the sim and the aircraft, but mainly just to kind of get a feel for what it's actually like to fly one of these things. Of course, the simulator has a little box behind this cockpit area where the instructor sits and kind of manipulates things, and they do things like fail engines on you and stuff like that. But of course the real aircraft, as you can see, goes back a long way here. Then there's the tail as well, of course, with that big tail rotor on the top of the pylon. So you have to bear that in mind when you're operating the aircraft, when you're taxiing it around. There's a lot of it behind you, and of course once you're onto decks offshore and stuff, that is even more apparent. So that sim to aircraft conversion was our first chance to get really hands-on, which was really, really exciting. I mean, pulling this thing, max takeoff weight at 12 tons into the hover just by lifting the collective was a feeling I'll never forget. I couldn't wipe the smile off my face for hours. So that was pretty awesome. Then the next thing we did in the aircraft was our day decks. So we actually flew off to a rig who kindly facilitated allowing my stick buddy and I to do 5 takeoff and landings each on the platform, which gets us the practice we needed in doing the approach and then the transition and land on the deck, and the same lift into the hover, and then pulling power coming up to our takeoff decision point, and then flying away from the platform. We practiced it in the sim, so we knew what to expect, we knew what we were aiming to do. But the sim is quite difficult to do on the sort of rig side of things, because the visual elements of the real world and the kind of seat of the pants feel that you get can't be completely replicated. So it was great to get the chance to do that for real. And then after that, we're deemed as ready then to become sort of useful co-pilots to a certain extent anyway. So we then go off and do flights with passengers, taking them to rigs with experienced training captains who keep us right and start to build up our knowledge and understanding of the job itself as we actually go through the day-to-day workings of a helicopter company taking oil and gas workers to their place of work and back. You know, it's a really great opportunity to kind of build up the kind of understanding of what each day is like, from loading on the passengers, talking to our traffic team who look after the passengers, the ramp team who manage everybody around here, helping get fuel on board, getting the aircraft checked by the engineers, requesting permission to taxi around on our ramp here for Bristow, and then of course dealing with Aberdeen Tower and ground and getting our movement around the airport and all that sort of stuff.
Bristow 78 Bravo. Bristow 78 Bravo, Aberdeen ground taxi Bristol via Delta. Bristol via Delta, Bristow 78 Bravo.
Then the different radio frequencies that we speak on offshore. There are various different radar frequencies as we transit further and further offshore. And then, of course, dealing with the rigs and the boats themselves, talking to them on the radio, asking what their load is that they need to bring back to Aberdeen, how many passengers they have, whether we need to take fuel. They also very kindly provide us with hot food and drinks, which is a real pleasure to enjoy that on the way back once we're in the cruise, and just kind of get to know what the actual job is like. It's a noisy, visceral environment, and it's quite difficult to communicate with people in other means other than over the radio or the intercom, because it is so noisy. So you have to kind of learn to deal with a bit of sort of basic sign language. There's a lot of thumbs up, there's a lot of gesturing, all that kind of stuff, which makes it quite interesting, and you get used to that, and you get used to the way people do things, and the procedures are kind of known offshore as well, so that's really good. You can see here I'm sitting in my cotton flying suit, which in the summer we're allowed to fly in. We wear a life jacket as well, which I'm not wearing at the moment, and our orange immersion suits, which keep us warm and reasonably dry if we were to ditch in the sea. In the summer, with the sea temperature warm enough during daylight hours, and with sea state, i.e. not too rough, we're allowed to fly wearing our cotton suits if we choose, and obviously the life jacket as well. So we kind of interchange. Sometimes I come into work wearing my cotton suit, other times I wear my uniform shirt as well. So various different outfit changes go on. You'll see up in flight planning, crews up there come in the morning, or various staggered times through the day. They sit and they plan their flights, looking at everything from weather and NOTAMs, weather both onshore and offshore of course, aircraft serviceability, what sort of loads the client's looking to fly with. All that kind of stuff is all covered during the planning phase. Then we get in our suits, move out to the aircraft. The co-pilot normally comes out first, gets the battery on, gets the weather forecast and sort of weather current information rather from the ATIS, and also gets the clearance from the tower to start the aircraft up. And then once the captain comes out and joins, a ramp crew will come out and give us a start. So they stand out at the front of the aircraft and visually monitor to make sure that nothing goes wrong as we start. Initially the auxiliary power unit, which I showed you, and then the main engines as well. We do those one at a time. We've got the throttles up here on the roof and the fuel selectors. We've got the rotor brake, which we would obviously take off first. And then once the aircraft's all up and running, all these screens and everything come to life, and we're able then to kind of set everything up, put our route into the flight management system, make sure that all our bug settings are right on our primary flight display, that our nav display is displaying what we need. And we go through absolutely everything. We've got a checklist for all the procedures, so for starts all the way right through to during the flight. So our takeoff checks, cruise checks, everything you can think of. We've got our offshore checks in blue as well here, so we always reference the checklist. And that's pretty much how a kind of normal day starts. We would either have normally 1 or 2 flights, so maybe out to a platform, back with passengers, and then maybe a rotor's running changeovers, so we'll taxi up to one of the hot spots. The traffic guys will come out, they'll take the passengers inside, they'll bring our next lot out once we've taken some fuel on board, and then we'll head off again and do it again to either the same place again or usually a different platform on the second trip, and ferry some more passengers out to work and bring some others home. It's different every day, although we are generally going to mainly the same places. Every day is different because the weather is always different. You're flying with different colleagues, and there's always something. It's aviation, it's the real world. There's always a curveball that happens that kind of makes you think and makes you replan or kind of discuss how you're going to do things to make sure that you achieve a safe and efficient outcome, because that's ultimately what we're here to do. We're kind of bus drivers, really. We take people to and from their place of work. It's an important job, but it's not vital that we go now. We're not search and rescue. We're here to do it safely and efficiently and get everybody where they need to be, on time if we can, but the absolute priority is safety. So that's basically the job. I really hope that over the next few months and years I'll be able to share more of the job with you. I'd love to be able to attach some cameras in the cockpit and take you on a trip with me and let you see what it's actually like to approach and land onto something offshore. It is amazing. Every time I do it, I see a rig or a ship in the distance and think, wow, I'm going to get to actually land this massive aircraft on that. It always gives me a buzz. I really, really love doing it, and it's a privilege to be at this point where I'm actually now being paid to fly helicopters and really live out my childhood dream. So thank you to Bristow for giving me that opportunity to get started in a flying career. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and of course thank you to you as well for all your support. So many of you have messaged me here on YouTube and through my social media channels on Facebook and Instagram particularly, wishing me well and asking questions. And a lot of you here on YouTube particularly may not be aware until now even that I've actually got a job flying helicopters. A lot of you message me saying, what's going on, Rory? How are things? Where are you? You kind of disappeared. And all I can say is I apologise for the fact that it's taken so long to give you an update. But as I think I've outlined, all that training initially in the simulator and the ground school and then the line training was pretty intense for several months. I've got an 18-month-old lad called Jack and my wife as well. We've bought a house up in Stonehaven, which is just a few miles south of Aberdeen on the coast. So there was a lot of things going on in my life with a new job and a small child and new house and all the rest of it. There was just not enough time to try and do something. So yeah, thank you very much indeed for subscribing. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all your encouragement. Do stick around here on the channel and check out some of my back catalogue of videos. And I do try to post relatively regular updates and some photographs and things from various parts of the job on my Facebook page and my Instagram page as well. Details on the screen for you to follow me on there if you don't already. But from me here on the ramp at Bristow in Aberdeen, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio.
Ramp, good morning. Charlie Delta, we're coming down. Delta for hotspot, please. Charlie Delta, ramp, we're on the top for hotspot 2, then it'll be a span for shutdown. Right at the top, hot 2, then a stand for the shutdown. Charlie Delta, thanks.